You're staring at a credit card statement. $3,200 balance. Minimum payment, $64. You pay it, feel responsible, and move on with your week. 3 months later, you're still staring at basically the same number. 6 months later, it's higher. A year later, you realize you've paid over $700 and somehow owe more than when you started. My name is Dave, and I spend way too much time thinking about minimum payments. This video is for anyone who's ever looked at that tiny number at the bottom of their statement and felt relief instead of alarm. If this untangles something that's been quietly bothering you, you'll probably find value in what we do here. Consider sticking around. So here's a belief that sounds completely rational on the surface. Paying the minimum keeps you in good standing, protect your credit score, and lets you handle the balance when you have more money. It's the responsible floor. It's literally what the credit card company asks for. It's printed right there on the statement. Why wouldn't it be okay? The emotional logic checks out too. When you're tight on cash, $64 feels doable. $3,200 does not. Your brain is wired to avoid immediate pain, so it picks the option that doesn't trigger panic. You get to keep your lights on, your gas tank full, your fridge stocked. The minimum payment gives you breathing room. And honestly, credit card companies understand this better than most therapists. They're not sitting around hoping you pay off your balance tomorrow. They've structured the entire system so that the minimum payment feels like progress. It feels like you're being responsible. It feels like you're handling it. But you're not handling it. You're servicing it. Let's put actual numbers to this, because the math here is quiet but brutal. Say you've got that $3,200 balance at 22% APR, pretty standard for a lot of cards out there. If you only pay the minimum each month, which usually hovers around 2% of your balance, you'll be making payments for about 14 years. 14 years. And you won't just pay back the $3,200 you borrowed. You'll pay around $6,400 total. That means $3,200 in interest alone. You're essentially buying everything on that card twice. Every dollar you spent, you're spending again just for the privilege of spreading it out. Now let's change one thing. Let's say instead of paying $64 a month, you paid $100. Just $36 more. That's like skipping 2 fancy coffees a week, or 1 streaming service, or eating out 1 less time a month. With that extra $36, you'd be debt-free in about 3.5 years instead of 14. And you'd pay around $4,200 total instead of $6,400. That's $2,200 less in interest. Think about that for a second. $36 a month is the difference between paying for 3.5 years versus 14 years. It's the difference between a sprint and a slow march across a desert. But here's the thing that makes this even more insidious. Most people don't stay at $3,200. Life happens. The car needs new tires. Your kid needs braces. You have a medical bill. A wedding comes up. You add another $800 to the card. Now the minimum payment adjusts up to match the new balance. You keep paying it. The balance never really shrinks. You're on a treadmill that moves at exactly the speed you're walking. So you feel like you're working hard, but you're not actually getting anywhere. And the credit card company? They love this. They've designed the entire experience around making you feel okay about it. The statement doesn't scream, "Warning, you're going to pay double." It just quietly shows you a small number in a little box. It might even say something reassuring like, "Thank you for your payment," when you pay online. You get a little dopamine hit from checking something off your list. You feel like you're managing your money. But what you're really doing is funding someone else's profit margin for the next decade and a half. I remember reading data from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau showing that people who pay only the minimum tend to carry balances for decades. Not because they can't afford more, but because they never realize how the math is working against them. The statement doesn't show you the 14-year timeline. It doesn't show you the $3,200 in interest. It just shows you the $64. And it makes that number look small and manageable and reasonable. Let me tell you about someone I know. Call her Jenna. She graduated college, got her first real job, and picked up a decent rewards card with a $6,000 limit. Over the course of a year, she put about $4,500 on it. A couch, a laptop for work, a bridesmaid dress and flight for her best friend's wedding, some car repairs. Nothing crazy. Nothing reckless. Just normal life stuff that didn't quite fit in her paycheck that month. When money got tight after her landlord raised rent, she switched to minimum payments. It felt like the smart move. She wasn't missing payments, her credit score stayed fine, and she figured she'd clear it once she got her annual raise or maybe a tax refund. 3 years later, she'd paid over $2,000 and still owed $3,800. She couldn't figure out where the money was going. She thought she was being responsible. The credit card company thought she was a perfect customer. And that's the quiet horror of it. She did everything the system asked her to do, and the system rewarded her by keeping her stuck. Now, maybe you're thinking, but I need that extra money for rent, groceries, gas. I can't just magic up another $50 a month. And that's completely fair. I'm not here to pretend everyone has wiggle room in their budget. Sometimes the minimum is genuinely all you can do in that moment, and there's no shame in that. But the trap isn't about 1 month. It's about making the minimum your default setting without ever checking in on what it's actually costing you over time. It's about treating a crisis response like a long-term strategy. Think of it like this. If you're driving and your check engine light comes on, you might ignore it for a day because you're busy. That's fine. But if you're still ignoring it 6 months later, you're not being busy. You're avoiding the mechanic until the problem gets worse and more expensive. The minimum payment is like duct tape on your check engine light. It makes the warning go away without fixing anything underneath. And here's what makes it even more frustrating. The credit card companies know exactly what they're doing. They've studied consumer behavior. They know that when people see a small number, they feel relief. They know that when you're stressed about money, you'll pick the path that feels easiest right now, even if it costs you thousands later. They've optimized the entire system not around helping you get out of debt, but around keeping you in it as long as possible while making you feel like you're doing fine. There's even a term for this in behavioral economics. It's called payment decoupling. It's when the pain of paying feels separate from the pleasure of buying. When you swipe a card, buy something, and then weeks later see a minimum payment, your brain doesn't connect the two experiences anymore. You don't feel like you're paying for that couch or that vacation. You just feel like you're paying a bill. And bills are something you just handle. You don't question them. You just pay them and move on. Here's the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You make a purchase. You pay it off slowly. But then something else comes up. Maybe it's an emergency. Maybe it's just convenience. You add to the balance. The minimum payment adjusts. You keep paying it. The balance never really shrinks. And worse, you start to normalize it. You start to think, well, this is just how credit cards work. Everyone carries a balance. And maybe everyone you know does. But that doesn't make it okay. It just makes it common. This isn't a mistake you made once. It's a system you've accidentally opted into, and it resets every single billing cycle. The credit card company sends you a new statement. You see a new minimum payment. You pay it. Repeat. You're stuck in a loop, and the loop is profitable for everyone except you. So what do? I'm not going to give you a step-by-step plan because your situation is specific to you, but I will give you some questions to sit with. How long have you been paying the minimum on any card you carry right now? If you pulled up a credit card payoff calculator, there are free ones online, and typed in your balance, interest rate, and current payment, what would the timeline say? What could you do with the interest money you're about to hand over if you shifted even a small amount more toward the balance each month? And if you genuinely can't shift anything right now, when will you revisit this? A month from now? 3 months? 6? Here's another question worth asking. What would it mean to treat your credit card debt like an emergency, even a low-grade one? Not the kind that makes you panic, but the kind that makes you pay attention. Because right now, for a lot of people, credit card debt is just there. It's background noise. It's part of the financial wallpaper. But what if you looked at it the way you'd look at a leaky pipe? You might not fix it today, but you'd probably call a plumber soon because you know it's only going to get worse. The truth is, even adding $10 or $20 more than the minimum makes a difference. Not a huge one, but a real one. On that $3,200 balance, if you paid $80 instead of $64, you'd shave about 3 years off the payoff timeline and save hundreds in interest. It's not dramatic. It's not going to change your life overnight, but it's movement in the right direction, and movement compounds over time. Because here's what I want you to understand. The minimum payment isn't evil. It's not a scam. It's a tool. But it's a tool designed to benefit the lender, not you. It keeps you liquid in the short term and keeps them paid in the long term. It's not designed to free you. It's designed to keep the relationship going as long as possible, because the longer you take to pay off the balance, the more interest they collect. Here's the reframe. The minimum payment isn't a plan. It's a placeholder. It's what you do when you don't have a plan yet. And that's okay for a season, for a month, maybe 2, maybe 3 if things are truly tight. But it can't be your strategy. It can't be the thing you default to without thinking. When you see the minimum payment as a financial speed limit instead of a finish line, everything shifts. A speed limit tells you the maximum you're allowed to go. It doesn't mean you have to go that slow. You can go faster if the road is clear. You can get where you're going sooner. The minimum payment is the same thing. It's the floor, not the ceiling. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying you're bad with money if you've been paying minimums. I'm not saying you made a mistake. Life is expensive. Wages haven't kept up with costs. Emergencies happen. Sometimes the minimum payment is a survival tool, and there's nothing wrong with using it when you need to. But survival mode can't be permanent. At some point, you have to shift from getting through this month to getting out of this cycle. And that shift doesn't have to be big. It just has to be intentional. One more thing that's worth mentioning. The psychological weight of carrying debt is real. Even if you're not thinking about it consciously, it sits in the back of your mind. It's stress you don't always recognize as stress. It affects how you sleep, how you plan for the future, how you feel about money in general. Paying just the minimum keeps that weight on your shoulders longer than it needs to be there. Every month you stay in debt is another month you're carrying something that doesn't serve you. Let me bring it all back around. That $64 on a $3,200 balance feels like progress because you're doing something. But most of it is just covering interest. You're paying rent on your debt. You're keeping the lights on in a house you don't even want to live in. The principal, the actual amount you owe, barely moves. Month after month, you're running in place, and the credit card company is charging you a gym membership for the privilege. And the worst part? They've made it so convenient. Auto pay the minimum. Set it and forget it. You never have to think about it again. Except you should think about it. You should think about it every month. Because convenience and progress are not the same thing. If this clicked for you, if something here made you want to pull up your credit card statement and actually look at the numbers, share this with someone you care about who might be stuck in the same loop. This is one of those things people don't talk about until someone else says it first. There's no shame in carrying a balance. There's no shame in paying the minimum when that's all you can do. But there's power in understanding what it's actually costing you. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but why is the interest so high in the first place? Why is 22% APR just normal? And why do some people end up with 18% while others get stuck with 29%? Because once you understand how minimum payments trap you, the next obvious question is, who decided these interest rates? And why does it feel like they're designed to keep you underwater? That's what we're breaking down in the next video. Because the interest rate itself is its own kind of trap, and it starts way before you ever miss a payment. I'll see you in the next one.